Hi, everybody. I'm Nate Wiggum. I'm with Ian Capital. We do commercial real estate capital advisory, debt and equity placement across all property types all over the country. And I'm here with Adam Greenfader.
Thanks, Nate. Adam Greenfader here, managing partner of AG&T. We are real estate developers and advisors. We focus on residential and hotel properties in the Caribbean, Latin America, and Puerto Rico.
So today we're going to talk about Puerto Rico, but specifically in the context of bringing back critical manufacturing to the U.S. and how Puerto Rico traditionally has fit into that equation and what the opportunity around that really is today. But four really important points to discuss here, which is kind of the tax haven status here in Puerto Rico. This is generally a result of its unique status relative to the United States and some of the local programs here. So one really key thing I think it's really important for people that are looking at Puerto Rico to understand is that because there is no federal representation of the island in the Congress or the Senate, there's no federal taxation. I think there's one member of Congress, right, that represents Puerto Rico, but it's a non-voting member. Is that right?
Yeah, at this point, it's Jennifer Gonzalez who sits in Congress. And, while Jennifer has been very active in supporting the island, she doesn't have a vote. In fact, you had mentioned the size of Puerto Rico. Just based on its population size, Puerto Rico today would have 2 senators and 5 congressmen. So it doesn't have that federal representation. And while it didn't make a big difference while the island was booming in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, money has a way of hiding the cracks in the wall. Today, we can see that Puerto Rico, because it doesn't have its representation, has really suffered a lot. Puerto Rico has been in an economic depression for the last 12 or so years. And I think a lot of that would have gotten solved faster if Puerto Rico had its due representation. But correct, from a tax perspective, Puerto Rico does not pay federal taxes. And the whole tax system and tax incentives has really been what has created the island of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico was envisioned, as we mentioned in earlier segments, as a manufacturing hub, and there were tax incentives specifically that were created to generate millions and millions of dollars of manufacturing.
Right. And kind of that unique status here really means that Puerto Rican residents don't pay federal taxes as a result of that. And so when that's combined with some of the local tax programs, which we're going to chat about, it really means that from a tax perspective, Puerto Rico, I believe, is the lowest taxes U.S. citizens would pay anywhere in the world if they're qualifying under those programs.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about that. Local program we were alluding to is called Act 60. It was formerly called Act 2022. This was a program or a law here that was passed in 2012, really with the intention of creating a tax structure that would incentivize business owners to move to the island and bring their businesses with them, creating economic activity and ideally some level of additional employment. That program, I would say, I think has been relatively successful. The 2 parts, Act 2022, Act 20 was for corporations. If you have a company that you set up here that does what they call export services, which encompasses a lot of things, but really means you're providing services to entities that are not in Puerto Rico, that company will pay a maximum corporate tax rate of 4%. And then Act 22, which covers individuals, basically means that you have a local tax exemption on dividends, distributions, or capital gains related to that business and other investments that you make. So I think to date, we're pushing, I think, about 2,000 people that have come here for the individual incentives. I think a similar number of businesses. I know for me personally, that was one of the things that brought me to the island. The program really fit well for my business. And so last year, they passed a law called Act 60, which basically consolidated this program along with a bunch of other tax-related incentives to put them all under one umbrella.
Act 2022, as it's locally called, has probably been one of the most successful tax incentives in the history of Puerto Rico. And it's been successful on multiple fronts, but I would say one of the most interesting consequences of Act 2022 has been that it's helped create a plethora of new industries and markets. Besides bringing upwards of 2,000 high net worth North Americans to Puerto Rico that would have never moved to the island, it's created a booming resort industry. All the top resorts in Puerto Rico, Dorado Beaches, Bahia Beach, Palmas del Mar, Rio Mar, they were suffering just like every other aspect of Puerto Rico. But when this act was created and started to bring, North Americans to Puerto Rico, they started to move into the resorts. Why not? I mean, you could live in a beautiful resort with amazing weather at half the price or less of living in the United States. So the resorts started to see, really strong gains, especially on the residential real estate. I mean, we're talking 15% year-over-year price increases over the last 5 years. Now, those numbers are unheard of, while the rest of Puerto Rican real estate has been decreasing at 30 to 40% total. The resorts have done really well. But I think that probably the best part about Act 2022 has been the gray matter, really the intelligence level and new creativity and new ideas that's come to Puerto Rico. So, Puerto Rico has had this ingress of really smart people come in, most of them, hard-working entrepreneurs in cryptocurrency and in the medical marijuana industry and in biopharma and in so many other new high-tech industries, that I think it's going to really be the elephant in the room when they describe ultimately what Puerto Rico was like in the 2020s. They're going to say this was the group that changed the island, and I do believe so. I think this is going to have a super impact on really the way the island progresses moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, for me being here and being a part of that community over the last year, and networking within it, and meeting other people that are part of it, it's been an amazing experience because I've met so many different people from so many different industries and walks of life that, like you said, are just very intelligent, very successful. And I really haven't met anyone who is just kind of interested in just sitting here and not contributing or not doing creating some economic benefit for the island. It seems like everyone's looking to invest locally, looking to expand their businesses, looking to develop new opportunities here, both within the community and with the broader Puerto Rican business community at large. So I really think I totally agree with you. I think the mental and intellectual capital that this specific program is being able to attract is going to benefit the island probably for decades to come.
Yeah, I mean, you're a great example. I mean, it's Puerto Rico is a place for people that care, that people want to make a change, that want to make a difference. And they can do it in Puerto Rico. I mean, Puerto Rico's small enough, and it certainly has the need. So I would say that if you're looking to live in paradise and not pay any federal taxes and really make a change in the place you live, Puerto Rico is a great place to be.
I totally agree. So along the same front of tax incentives, a lot of people may or may not be familiar with the opportunity zone structures that were created as part of the 2017 Tax Act. Virtually the entire island here is part of an opportunity zone. There's a couple specific locations that were excluded, but I think the amount that was excluded was 2 to 3% of the island. So something like 97 to 98% of the island does receive opportunity zone status.
Yeah, it's just amazing. We've been looking at the opportunity zones throughout the U.S. and while the program is great for developing urban core in the U.S., there's no place in the United States where you can buy prime beachfront, beautiful land, where you can build a 5-star resort. It just doesn't exist. In Puerto Rico, it's all around. I mean, there are property after property that qualify for opportunity zones. And, while opportunity zone is great from a tax perspective, it can be leveraged with so many other programs that currently exist and that we will talk about later in the program. So it's just another level of value added by being in Puerto Rico, is having an opportunity zone, almost everywhere you go.
Right. About a year ago, the opportunity zone obviously is part of the Federal Tax Act, and then every state has to create their own program, a lot of which they just mirror the federal incentives. Some actually have less incentive relative to the standard federal structure. Puerto Rico kind of went above and beyond. Last year, they passed their own local opportunity zone law that not only mirrors the federal incentives, but added a bunch of additional benefits specific to the island as well.
Yeah, we have already been involved in multiple transactions that have taken advantage of the Opportunity Zone program. There is a plethora of great both lawyers and accountants who can dig deep into this. For anyone that wants more information, reach out to either Nate or myself, and we can make introductions and walk you through with the right experts, how this works. But it's very exciting. It adds, big returns to your bottom line. And again, it's from a tourist perspective or a manufacturing perspective, it's just another part of a bunch of different incentives that are available if you get involved in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to go into all the different incentives here, but I mean, there's incentives, really compelling incentives for hospitality related development, incentives related to movie production, filmmaking, incentives related to things related to manufacturing, to creating certain types of financial entities like private equity firms and other things like that. And there's just a plethora of incentives here for all different types of industries. So we appreciate you taking the time to watch this presentation. Hope it was informative. If you're interested in learning more about the opportunities in Puerto Rico, of which there are many, feel free to reach out to either one of us. There's a link below to go to our website to download a copy of the presentation as well.